part 3 of our series on how to build a real estate lead generation chatbot for Facebook Messenger. And as we covered in the other parts of this series, we're going to be using 3 systems, and they all serve different purposes. We're going to be using Dialogflow, which is going to understand the messages that users send, and that's what people do on Messenger. They send messages. They don't. Most of the time, they don't click buttons. So you're going to want to understand those messages. Dialogflow also extracts data from those messages, and then you're going to want to store that data. So we're going to use Manychat for that, and we can store that data in what Manychat calls user fields. And then that data becomes actionable. So it'll immediately populate user profiles because Manychat provides almost like a CRM. It's just a database of everybody that messages your chatbot, and will store user data for each user that messages the chatbot. You can also take this data and you can create different types of responses. So we're going to use Manychat as a response system too, and your responses they can be intelligent because using the data that we get from Dialogflow, that data then can guide the response. So that's very helpful as well. And that's really, at the end of the day, what's most important is when a user interacts with your business and you're using automation, that you can understand the user so that you can automate the right response to the user's message. And most people end up failing at that because they think they can do everything just by designing a conversation. But you can't really design a conversation. You have to anticipate what users are going to say. So that's why we started with Dialogflow first. Once you understand a user and their message, then you can guide them, and you can use buttons and all types of rich media inside of a response that will help you, or at least help the user get the response they were looking for. Yes, so what we're going to do is then focus on, in this video, is the value of, or the importance of, what Dialogflow's entities provide. They allow you to extract possible values and store them in Manychat. You can see here that I have a Dialogflow intent. This is just a lead intent. And inside of the intent, I have a bunch of examples of things that users might say. I don't have everything the user says, just about 20 or so different phrases, what we call training phrases, so that we can train the AI to learn. And then I have a number of different words that are highlighted inside of these phrases because these words all have different possible values that Dialogflow will understand. Some of these values have been defined by us. We've created lists of possible values, and those lists are stored in what Dialogflow is called entities. So for example, rent a condo in NYC. So we know that the user might say not rent, maybe they say buy or sell or lease. These are all possible values, and so we have created a list of possible values and in an entity that we call property action. These are the actions that users take. And I've also created another entity called property residential. And these are all the different types of residential properties that a user might be looking for. Maybe they're looking for a condo or an apartment or a house or a townhouse or a vacation home. They're all residential properties. And if we can understand if Dialogflow can understand that these are some possible values that users might say, then we only need one phrase, and we can Dialogflow will check to see if that value exists in our lists. Same with locations, right? I have NYC as an example of possible values in my property locations entity, and we'll just look at that one real quick. You can see here these are all of the locations that my real estate agency serves. These are the cities, but I have NYC as a synonym because somebody might just type NYC. They're not going to type out New York City. And we'll store New York City as a value, but Dialogflow will accept NYC to be able to determine that this is what the user wants. Now, how you set up your locations is really up to you. This assumes that my real estate agency serves people nationally, so I have across the U.S. and I have a whole bunch of major cities and states listed here. But if you only serve New York City, for example, as a real estate agent, you would probably want to list out, all the different areas in New York City along here, and then all the different ways that users might mean that area. So, for example, West Side, East Side, Queens, Manhattan, right? And then there's different ways that users say that, so you would have those as synonyms. So how you structure your locations is up to you. This is just a really good example of possible values that you would be able to accept. And in the previous video in the series, we showed how you can handle scenarios where users enter a location that you don't serve. You can capture a value for that as well. So these entities are part of your examples of things that users say, and you'll be able to extract a value, and you're going to want to store those values for an extended period of time, because Dialogflow will only store the value for about 20 minutes. And it's a lead, and you're going to want to follow up with the lead in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, months down the road. If you have that data stored, it's valuable to have that. So that's where Manychat comes in hand. So Dialogflow first, though, it uses these entities to look for a possible value, and then when the user sends a message, it stores that value, whatever the user said. So you can see using our examples here, these are the values that we're getting: rent, condo, NYC, 8 weeks, September, and it stores them in Dialogflow parameters. Okay, and I've named these parameters in a similar way to my entity names. It just makes it easier. But you can change that. Like maybe if I'm looking for a duration, I want a value, a name for my parameter to be like renting duration, right? It's still going to use the duration entity to get a value, but it's going to store it in a parameter named renting duration. Now, it turns out that I called it duration, so I wanted to show you that you can actually edit these names. And now, the thing is, Dialogflow has parameter names, and Manychat has user fields, and they serve the exact same purpose. They store a value that becomes actionable. And in order for Dialogflow or in order for your chatbot to get this data into Manychat, you're going to want to have your user fields match your parameter names. This is really important. At least that's what Janice does. Janice will look for if the parameter name matches the user field name in Manychat, the data will automatically get stored. And that's important. It needs to match exactly. And so another thing to point out is that Manychat actually has different types of user fields. So if I click New User Field, you can see you would enter a name for the user field. It's got to match the parameter name in Dialogflow. And it could be a text or number or any of these. Now, the number one is particularly useful. Because let's say a user says, looking for an apartment with 2 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms. Okay, and I'm just going to click enter. And see, I spelled that wrong, and that's why Dialogflow didn't pick it up. But if I change that, I can always assign an entity to it. So it was a spelling mistake. So you can actually select it. And this is bathrooms. And I have an entity for bathrooms. Yeah, because the user might say washrooms or water closet or toilet or something like that. So I have a list of possible values. But you can see here that I have the dialog flow detected that this was a number, and it automatically added. It was able to do that because it was able to extract a number using its built-in system entity called sys.number. So you're not going to create a list of every number. Just let the software do that for you. And it was able to determine that this is a value. But you'll notice that I didn't name the parameter. I didn't name it just number. I gave it a unique parameter name called bedroom number. And for this one here, I gave it a unique parameter called bathroom number. It's using the same entity, number, to get a value, but I want the number stored in different fields. And that's because I have, inside of Manychat, I've created two different fields, and they're both number fields. So let me search for bathroom. You can see here that bathroom number is a user field name, and the type of field is a number. So it's going to save a number value that you get with Dialogflow into this field, and then that number becomes actionable, right? You can, for example, later in this series, I'm going to show you how you can connect bot sheets to this Manychat bot, and you can see here that I have a list of properties in a Google Sheet that I'm going to manage, properties for sale, and it has this, it has a column for bathrooms and a column for bedrooms, and each has a number. So I need to know that the number is specific to bathrooms or the number is specific to bedrooms, right? So this is really important because if somebody says I'm looking for 5, they give you a number, and you don't know that that number is specific to to bedrooms, then you're not going to give them what they're looking for. You're not going to respond accurately. So this is where you can really get granular and really capture the data that you need to understand the user. Extract the data with either a custom entity that you create, like I did for my locations. Use a system entity, like this one is going to extract a number. And then when users trigger this intent, those values, these are just example values, they get stored in these fields in what Dialogflow calls parameters. But as long as your parameter names match what you have in Manychat, then you'll instantly have access to that data. And that data becomes actionable, both in terms of your ability to follow up with the user, because it's stored in a profile for each user, and also in your ability to create these data-driven responses. So you can create flows using that data and deliver the right response to the user. Or you can even connect another system to Manychat, in this case bot sheets, and then you'll be able to search and generate a list of properties that match the user's request, all from a single message that originates in Dialogflow, right? So you don't have to ask them a series of questions like, how many bathrooms? And then ask them to click a button. How many bedrooms, right? The user might just send a message to your chatbot that says, I'm, looking to rent, or looking for an apartment with 2 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms. And actually, they didn't even say rent here. So you might then use Manychat to follow up and say, oh, well, do we have all the values we need to be able to respond? We don't know if they're looking to buy, or we're looking to sell, or they're looking to lease, right? So we can take all of the values and say, do these fields, do we have all of the values that we need to be able to respond to a user? And if we do, just give them the response. Let's dynamically generate a list of properties that are, that meet this. If we need a location, because they didn't tell us where, then we can ask for that in Manychat. Or if we don't know if they're looking to buy, sell, rent, or lease, we can then ask for that. And that's the goal, is get all of the information that you need to be able to respond to the user either using automation or when you follow up with the user, the more data you have, the faster you can help them and the faster your real estate agency will get to the transaction.